Dave was a pretty ordinary guy. Average job, average neighborhood, average paycheck. But Dave had one habit that most people would have laughed at if they knew about it. Every single morning, instead of stopping for a coffee or grabbing a snack from the gas station, Dave transferred $5 into an investment account. That was it. Nothing dramatic, nothing complicated. Just $5 every single day for 30 years. And here is what happened. Before we get to the number, I want you to really sit with that image for a second. $5. That is less than most people spend on a single drink. It is the cost of a candy bar and a bottle of soda. It is what most of us hand over without even thinking about it. But Dave thought about it. Not obsessively, not in a way that made him miserable. He just decided that those $5 were working harder somewhere else than they were sitting in a vending machine. Now let us talk about what that actually looks like mathematically, because this is where things get genuinely wild. $5 a day adds up to about $150 a month. Over a full year, that is roughly $1,800. Not exactly the kind of number that makes your jaw drop. After 10 years of saving without investing, you would have around $18,000. Okay, fine. That is a decent emergency fund. Nothing revolutionary. But here is where people completely misunderstand what Dave was actually doing. Dave was not just saving. Dave was investing. He was taking that money and putting it into a broad market index fund every single year. Nothing exotic, nothing risky, just a simple, diversified fund that tracked the overall stock market. Historically, markets have returned somewhere in the range of 8 to 10% annually over long time periods. Some years are rough, some years are incredible, but over decades, the average has been remarkably consistent. So using a conservative 8% annual return, here's what happened to Dave's money over those 30 years. After year 10, his invested amount had grown to nearly $30,000. He had only personally contributed $18,000. The market had handed him an extra $12,000 just for showing up consistently. Already the math is doing something interesting. But wait, by year 20, Dave had put in $36,000 total. His account, though? It was worth somewhere around $83,000, more than double what he contributed. And here's the thing that most people miss in that moment. The growth rate was actually accelerating, because now the money he had already earned was itself earning returns. That is the compounding effect, and it does not play fair. The longer it runs, the more ruthlessly powerful it becomes. By year 30, Dave had personally invested roughly $54,000. His portfolio? Closer to $200,000. Nearly 4 times what he put in. From $5 a day. Now imagine Dave started young. Imagine he kept this going even longer. Because the people who truly transform their financial lives are not the ones who save the most money in a single year. They are the ones who start early and simply do not stop. There is a real story worth knowing here. A woman named Ann Scheiber worked as an auditor for the IRS for over 2 decades. She never made much money at all, but when she retired in the mid-1940s, she began investing modest amounts into stocks and left that money completely alone. By the time she passed away in 1995, at the age of 101, that investment had grown to over $22 million. She did not time the market perfectly. She did not pick genius stocks. She just started, stayed consistent, and never sold in a panic. Time did the rest. That is what Dave understood that most people around him never figured out. And here is where this story gets a little uncomfortable, because I want you to think about your own spending for just a moment. The average American spends around $90 a month just at coffee shops. Car payments are now averaging somewhere above $700 a month. Subscriptions that people barely use are running close to $200 a month. The money is almost always there. The question is just where it ends up going. When people hear about investing $5 a day, the most common pushback is that it does not feel like enough to matter. And I understand that instinct completely. In the early years, watching a small account grow slowly can feel almost pointless. There is barely any visible progress. But that quiet early period is exactly when the foundation is being built. The longer the money stays invested, the more violently the growth accelerates in later years. The people who quit during that slow early phase never get to experience what Dave experienced. The second objection is that $5 a day is actually $150 a month. And for some people, that genuinely is not available. Fair point. But here's the honest truth for most people. It is not that the money does not exist. It is that we have never actually stopped to track where it is going. $5 disappears so easily that we often do not even register spending it. That is exactly why redirecting it feels almost painless once you build the habit. And the habit, by the way, is the actual point. The dollar amount matters far less than the consistency. Someone who invests $50 a month without fail will almost always build more wealth than someone who invests $500 twice and then stops. The behavior is the foundation. Everything else is just arithmetic on top of it. Dave is also not some cautionary tale about deprivation. He still bought things he enjoyed. He still had fun. He just developed a question he asked himself before small purchases. Not whether he could afford it today, but whether the future version of himself would rather have this thing or have the compound growth it could generate. Sometimes the answer was absolutely buy the thing, but more often than not, once you really understand what that $5 is capable of becoming, the choice starts feeling different. There is one more thing about Dave's story that matters enormously, and it is the piece almost nobody talks about. Dave started in his 20s, not because he was particularly disciplined or unusually motivated. He started because someone showed him the numbers early enough that time was still on his side. If Dave had waited until his 40s to begin, the outcome would have been dramatically smaller. Not because he would have saved less money, but because the compound growth engine would have had far fewer years to run. Time is the ingredient that cannot be purchased or replaced. Once it is gone, it is gone. So the real question this story leaves you with is not whether $5 a day is enough to matter. It clearly is. The real question is what day you decide to become the kind of person who starts. Because 30 years from now, you are going to be somewhere. You are going to look back at the choices you made today. And the only real decision in front of you right now is whether your future self looks back at this moment with relief or regret. Dave chose relief. Every single morning, one small transfer, one quiet decision, 30 years of showing up. That is the whole story. If this made you think differently about money, hit the like button and subscribe because we break down exactly this kind of financial thinking every single week. And drop a comment telling me what small daily habit you think you could redirect. I genuinely read every single one.